It is an honor for me to be introducing our speaker today, our keynote speaker. Newt Gingrich is a man of ideas and a vision. He has campaigned tirelessly on behalf of conservatives and Republicans across this country. I don't know anyone who has done more to build up the Republican Party than Newt Gingrich. In 1994, Newt brought the party together and the GOP ran on the Contract for America. The Contract for America outlined in detail the Republican plan for shrinking the size of government, lowering taxes, jump-starting the economy, and reforming welfare. In 1994, Newt Gingrich has led the Republican Party to the first majority in the House of Representatives in over 40 years. After becoming Speaker, he went on to balance the budget for 4 consecutive years, and he convinced President Clinton to sign into law reforms to our nation's welfare system. No politician of either party has thought more about the challenges that confront this nation than Newt Gingrich, and none have offered more concrete solutions. Please welcome the last conservative standing in the presidential race, the Honorable Newt Gingrich.
Well, thank you all for coming out this evening. I'm very, very grateful that you are here, and I appreciate very much all of you showing up on behalf of freedom and liberty, and I really appreciate your commitment to protecting America. The one thing I suspect every person here can agree on is that we want to make sure that Barack Obama is not reelected. I think the fact is that we are faced with, in President Obama, somebody whose values are radical, whose appointees are radical, and whose policies have hurt everyday working Americans. We've been through the longest period of high unemployment since the Great Depression. And the reasons are pretty straightforward. You have a president who believes in high taxes, big bureaucracy, class warfare. You have a president who's opposed to American energy policy. And as a result, we're paying too much for gasoline, too much for government, and we have too few jobs. And I decided to run for president because I thought that we needed somebody who could explain what we have to do to get America back on the right track. I think this is probably the most important election of our lifetime. I think the difference between America's future with a brand new president committed to the Constitution, to the Declaration of Independence, to the basic core beliefs of American exceptionalism, versus a future in which Obama got reelected despite the unemployment, despite the price of gasoline, despite the size of the deficits, despite the radicalism of his policies. Those two futures are as wide as any election in modern times. And so what you are doing by being active is you're helping raise a real choice about the nature of America and a real choice about the future for the young people. I notice a number of young people here tonight, which is great. This campaign, all campaigns, should be about young people. What kind of America are they going to live in? What kind of opportunities are they going to have? And what are we going to do now in order to make the decisions that give them a better future? And I think that's what this election should be all about. I ran in part because I believe that we need somebody who can stand up to Barack Obama and debate him in September and October and communicate our values and our commitment, and also communicate his failures. I think it's very important that we not allow him to go through life blaming George W. Bush for everything. You know, I know it'll be a shock to the Obama White House, but he's actually been president for almost 3.5 years. And at some point, he has to take responsibility for being president. But he's gone from a slogan in 2008 of "Yes, we can" to a slogan this year of "Why we couldn't." And that's not good enough. Americans don't vote for an apologist-in-chief. Americans vote for somebody to get the job done. And what is the job? It's pretty straightforward. We want a lot more jobs because we think that America only works when Americans are working. We want to have a lower price of gasoline and diesel because the fact is Americans live in a big country, they drive long distances, and they would like to have the choice of the kind of car they want to buy, not the kind of car Barack Obama wants them to buy. We also have to recognize the fundamental difference we have towards the world. As president, I want you to know that as commander-in-chief, I would never apologize to foreign radicals while they were killing young Americans. One of the reasons I am committed to an American energy policy is that I want to see America be independent so that no future president ever again bows to a Saudi king. Now, I'm convinced that we can achieve energy independence. We have new technologies. In North Dakota alone, they've gone from 150 million barrels of proven reserve to an estimated 24 billion barrels of proven reserve. That's just in one state. And the people who have developed North Dakota believe that with another generation of technology, we will get to 500 billion barrels of reserve just in North Dakota. If you look at what's happening with natural gas, we've gone from a 7-year supply in the year 2000 to a 125-year supply this year. We found that much more natural gas using these new technologies. We now produce 11% more natural gas than we had in 2008. And what's happened to the price? Production has gone up, price has gone down. It's dropped from $7.97 a unit to $2.05. If we had the same decline in the price of gasoline, it would end up at $1.13 a gallon. Now, I wasn't that bold. I said, let's try to get it under $2.50 a gallon. And I promptly had various people in the news media say, why, that's impossible. And I said, wait a second. It was $1.89 the day Barack Obama was sworn in. Now, if it was $1.89 3 years ago, why is it impossible? They said, well, the world's really complicated and who knows what will happen. And, you know, my point's this. If you have an American policy that emphasizes American production, then whatever happens in the rest of the world, you are likely to be better off than if you don't have an American policy and you don't emphasize American production. I want us to become sufficiently independent of energy that we can look at the Strait of Hormuz, where the Iranians are practicing closing it, through which 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil in the world goes. And I'd like us within a decade to be able to say to the Europeans, the Japanese, the Chinese, and the Indians, we are not too concerned, but you have a problem, and you had better fix it. I think it's time that other countries took up their share of responsibility in dealing with parts of the world that we have tried to solve on our own. Let me also suggest that if we have an American energy program, we're going to create millions of new American jobs. North Dakota today has 3.5% unemployment. Think about that in terms of where we are in North Carolina, 3.5%. That overstates the problem because there are 16,000 to 18,000 people in North Dakota, or jobs in North Dakota that are not filled because they're in the oil field. And the 3.5% who are unemployed don't have the right skills. So one of my proposals is that we modernize unemployment compensation so that in order to draw a check, you have to sign up for a business training program. So every person on unemployment compensation is being trained for a new, better job. So we have to match the workforce to the opportunities. Now, if you become energy independent, we'll be producing at least 4 million barrels a day more than we are right now. That will create two very good things. The several million new jobs are a major step towards balancing the federal budget. Because you take people off of food stamps, off of unemployment, off of welfare, off of Medicaid, out of public housing. They go to work, they take care of their family, they start paying taxes. So automatically, you have less government spending and you have more government income. So it's just a much better future. Second, the estimate by Harold Hamm, who helped develop North Dakota, is that if we developed energy independence using federal land and offshore development, over the next generation, for the young people who are here today, they will get $16 to $18 trillion in additional royalties. Not billion, trillion. That's bigger than the current national debt. So if we were to impose fiscal discipline in Washington, and believe me, having helped balance the budget for 4 straight years, and the only Speaker of the House to help balance the budget for 4 straight years, you have to impose it. They're not going to do it voluntarily. But if the American people would force the Congress to balance the budget, you could then set up a debt repayment fund, and as a result, you would end up with, for the young people who are here, at the end of their lifetime, we will have paid off the entire federal debt, and they will owe nothing. Now, this has a very practical implication for these young people. Today, under Barack Obama, the cost of interest on the federal debt, not repaying the debt, the interest on the federal debt, in their lifetime will be about $300,000. So each one of them will pay enough to buy a house, except there's no house. They're just paying for the politicians of the past. And that's why creating a debt repayment fund, taking the burden off of the children and grandchildren of this country, and getting the job done, so in one policy, energy independence, we no longer bow to the Saudis, and we no longer about the Chinese creditors, because neither becomes important in the world of energy independence. That's why it's such an important idea. Let me suggest we also need to get back to basic American values. The Declaration of Independence is very clear. It says we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. One of the unalienable rights, and unalienable means no bureaucrat, no judge, no politician can come between you and your rights. One of the unalienable rights is in the Second Amendment, where it says, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed upon. Now, I spoke yesterday to the National Rifle Association meeting in St. Louis, and I challenged them. And I said, you know, there's a United Nations treaty on small arms, which is designed by liberals to be the first step towards taking away the right to bear arms. It's a deliberate effort to create an international treaty as a result of which they'll start undermining our constitutional liberty. And I said, it's not enough to just oppose that treaty. What we need to do is move in the opposite direction. We need to say the time has come to have an American president who will stand up for the American Constitution and who will explain to the world why we believe what we believe. Notice how the Founding Fathers put it. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Now, they didn't say all Americans. They said everybody. They didn't say that God just endowed us. God endowed everybody. Now, that doesn't mean we need to go around the world and impose our beliefs, but we ought to go around the world and explain them. And so I proposed yesterday what Chris Cox of the NRA called the Gingrich Treaty. As president, I would propose that the United States submit a treaty that says that the right to bear arms is a universal human right, and that every human being on the planet should have the right to bear arms, that the Second Amendment should apply everywhere. Now, why did the Founding Fathers feel so strongly? Well, there's a practical reason. These were not theoreticians. These weren't college professors in an ivory tower. These were people who had fought the British Empire for 8 years. When they get around to writing the Declaration of Independence, they're in the early stages of that war. When they write the Constitution, after 8 years of bloodshed, they've won the war. And what did they learn? First of all, they learned that in April 18th and 19th, 1775, when the British Army marched to Concord and Lexington, if the Americans had been disarmed, the revolution would have been over. You know, the British Army knew how to suppress peasant rebellions. They had suppressed them in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England. They were pretty good at it because they normally ended up dealing with people who had pitchforks and not much else. But when they marched west from Boston and they arrived at they arrived at Concord and Lexington, they suddenly faced organized militia who were equipped. The result was a disastrous defeat for the British. They fled all the way back to Boston, taking casualties. And all the Founding Fathers knew that had the Americans been unarmed, the revolution would have ended that day. They also understood a very simple principle that we have to remind ourselves, that if you're going to be the land of the free, you have to be the home of the brave. We have been very fortunate because faced with crises around the world, we have had a number of efforts that have required young men and women to risk their lives to serve our country. One of the things I am committed to, if I become president, is to fundamentally and completely overhaul the Veterans Administration to ensure that our veterans get the kind of treatment, the kind of concern, the kind of convenience that they should have for having served our country. We live in a new and a different age. The damage done is different than it used to be. The veterans coming home have a different set of needs, and we have to have a much more sophisticated, much better approach to making sure that every veteran, in fact, has a seamless opportunity to be cared for and a seamless opportunity to be reintegrated back into society so that we communicate to them in practical, real ways our gratitude for their risks and the commitment they made to keep this country free. I believe, with your help, this can become an extraordinarily exciting election by this fall. I think there's a very easy test that Barack Obama will fail. And you can go and ask your neighbors, can they really afford 4 more years of this? Can they afford 4 more years of high unemployment? Can they afford 4 more years of high gasoline prices? Can they afford 4 more years of big deficit spending? Can they afford 4 more years of tax increases? And can they afford 4 more years of radical judges who will use the Supreme Court to change our basic rights and to fundamentally change America? Now, I think if we together can go out and make that case, we're going to be surprised. I tell everybody, Barack Obama has been the best food stamp president in American history. He's put more people on food stamps than any president in history. I would like to be the best paycheck president in American history. And I'm prepared to campaign in every neighborhood in North Carolina, to walk up to any door and ask a simple question. Would you rather your children grew up on food stamps, or would you rather your children grew up and had a chance to earn a paycheck? And I believe in every neighborhood of every background, a vast majority of parents are going to want a chance for their children to have a job and earn a paycheck. Let me say finally, Barack Obama is very proud that in Obamacare, which has to be repealed, but he's very proud that he extends insurance for young people to be able to get insurance through their parents until they're 26. I have a different proposal. I would like to ensure that young people can get a job so they can have their own insurance. And in addition, I would like them to have a good enough job that they could move out from their parents. I always think when I say that, the parents actually applaud a little more than the kids. I'm not trying to go to meddling, but look, I'm clearly the underdog, but I want you to know, and I get this question from reporters all the time, and if you get a chance to talk to one of the reporters who are here, I hope you'll chat with them about it. How many of you are glad that I am staying in the campaign? How many of you think that it's a good idea that the last conservative standing is actually running? Well, I want you to know that I remember very vividly that in 1976, Ronald Reagan had lost every primary till he got here. And when he got here, North Carolina changed history. And you have a chance once again to change history, because you can help us send a signal that despite the best efforts of the Washington elite, they don't get to pick the presidential nominee, you do. Now, I can't match Mitt Romney's ability to go to Wall Street and raise millions, but I can reach out to everyday folks. We have over 180,000 donors at newt.org. People have come there and helped us. And so I'd ask you to help provide people power to offset money power. Those of you who are on Facebook can go on Facebook tonight and communicate about the campaign. Those of you who are on Twitter can do the same thing. Those of you who have email lists can let all of your friends and neighbors know around the country that they have a chance to get involved. Many of you can call your friends. In an old-fashioned way, you could even see people face to face. We have a real opportunity. And people tell you that they're glad I'm still in the race, ask them to go to newt.org and sign up, even if they only give 1 Newt gallon of gas, which is $2.50. We have a place where you just can check off 1 Newt gallon and give $2.50. Or if you're excited and give 2 gallons, that's $5. I also would say that it's very important to remind people to vote on the primary. This is a very, very important primary. Together, I think we can make a huge difference. I am very, very grateful you came out this evening. I look forward to campaigning and working with you. Thank you very, very much.